Welcome one and all. It's time for yet another spicy, red-hot, sizzling, tingling, finger-licking good, moist, dishlicious, tender tournament report. Warhammer Age of Sigmar, this time it's Seasonal Slaughter. Now, Seasonal Slaughter is actually a series of one-day tournaments that took place at the TSN Arena in Nottingham, and I was able to attend one of them along with Mr. Remington. Spoiler alert, we do not end up playing against each other, but if you want to hear about his experiences from the event, he'll either have something on his channel or I'm sure we'll discuss it on the next Andy and Rem show, which may well be next week, we shall see. So, as you can see from the thumbnail, a slight twist on my usual Stormcast army because we've got a golden gargant in our midst. So I'm using my Talos, Jason and the Argonauts, classic action figure painted up as a giant, and I'll be using that as the mercenary gargant Bundo Whalebiter with my Stormcast Eternal army. And without any further ado, let's get rid of the thumbnail. And, well, you can see a picture of some cakes first of all. I took cakes to the event because I'm just such a nice, festive, all-round nice guy, aren't I? And obviously a bit of bribery to see if it edges me towards the best sportsmanship / favourite opponent award as well. Can never hurt. So, before we look at the first scenario, I'll go through my list. Okay, I've got it right here. So, it's 2,000 points. By the way, this is a 3-game event. So, Stormcast Eternals, obviously. Sticking with Astral Templars because I'm enjoying my Annihilators getting into combat without worrying about being monstrous rampaged when they get there. That is something I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying it more than the other potential sub-faction benefits. I may dabble with some others at some point, but for the moment sticking with Astral Templars to avoid that nastiness. My grand strategy, take what's theirs, sticking with that, because it just seems like a natural one for Stormcast. You're going to be teleporting lots of things down in the enemy half anyway. And my holy command that I've chosen for this army is Call for Aid. Now, often I've had 2 holy commands available to me. At this event, I'll only have the 1, and you'll see why, because of my battalions. So Call for Aid, of course, means I can bring back a unit of Liberators on death as long as it's near one of my heroes. And when I say one of my heroes, you may notice in this list that I only actually have 1 Stormcast hero, which is wild for me. So it's similar to the lists that I've taken recently, but major change, we're down to 1 hero, and we've got the Mercenary Gargant in there. So we have the Lord Imperatant as the general, with Arcane Tome, Master of Magic, pretty standard, and the spell Starfall, which is the stop piling in spell, which I think can be quite useful, especially because I've got this Gargant. I've got things like Gargants, Annihilators, and Chariots that small numbers of models that can do some good damage, and if you get them into the edge of an enemy unit, for instance, and you're able to stop that unit piling in, then them hitting back is suddenly a lot less scary. So I think that's a valid spell to take. We've got Bundo Whalebiter, of course, the Mercenary Gargant, 490 points for the big fella, and I just realised, shockingly, I've forgotten to enlarge the orange arrow on the screen so you can see it better. So let's just get the old thumbnail up for a moment while I just enlarge this for you. There we go. Changing the pointer size. Let's increase that from 3 to 8. Okay. There we go, that's better. So, we've got Mr. Whalebiter there. And a lot of different rules. Lots of rules. So I'm not used to having units with that many special rules, but he has a Gargant, so what do you expect? He's got special rules for when he charges, when he activates in combat and piles in, when he dies, varying degrees of power in the attacks depending on how wounded he is as well, and it's just a lot to take in. It's a large war scroll, lots of things. Not a huge amount to keep track of, it has to be said, so that's nice, but there is a lot going on still. Okay, then we've also got 2 units of 5 Liberators and the Judicators, who are sticking in there as my 3 battle line units. And we've got the chariot, who's done quite well so far, so that's staying in. Then we've got the long strikes, 3 of those, which you can actually see on the table right here. And then we've got 2 lots of annihilators with meteoric grandhammers. So, fairly standard for my lists, except this guy's in there instead of some of the other heroes. So, off the table, which you can't see at the moment, we've got both units of annihilators, we've got the judicators and 1 unit of liberators. That's going to be my standard setup for in the heavens units. Because the annihilators, obviously, they're much more potent when they drop down from the heavens. Obviously, that's why they're in there. The judicators, they're not as long range as the long strikes, as their long strike name would suggest. So they stay up there because they're a little bit more vulnerable when they actually want to attack. So by keeping them up, I can stop them getting potentially shot down before they get a chance to do anything, because they're not going to outrange many shooting units in this game. And 1 unit of liberators just so I can have another battle line unit just to drop down on an objective later on. And I'm not worried too much if they stay up there for a while, because they're only depriving me of 100 and something points. It's just a small unit that's not worth a lot. And also, often people will take the grand strategy of killing all your battle line units. So if you can keep them off the table for longer and drop them down wherever you like, it makes it difficult to achieve that sometimes. So that is my list, and I've got all of it into 2 battle regiments, which is a new thing for me to try here. So only 2 drops, and we'll see how it goes, because normally I've been taking the Bounty Hunters, Expert Conquerors, and the Warlord to get the extra Holy Command and to get the bonuses on my troops. But I decided let's go for 2 drops. I might actually get to dictate who goes first or second at some point. It won't be in this game, because I can tell you that my opponent's list is only 1 drop. So let's have a look back at the scenario we're using here before I go into my opponent's list. So the Silk Steel Nests. This is the one where you've got the 8 objectives on the battlefield, and you can destroy them effectively as you land on them. You can start just getting rid of them. And everyone always forgets to do the scuttling horrors when you destroy an objective, units nearby can get hurt. No one's ever remembered to do that in any of the games I've ever played on this scenario. And I won't be sad to see it go away because of that. It's just a thing you have to remember that no one actually does. So, you get extra points if you burn those objectives off, but of course you then lose the ability to hold them after that. So if you're sitting on them safely, then there's no reason to burn them, because you're going to want to get the extra points for holding more objectives than your opponent. If you're very comfortable and have tons of objectives anyway, then you might as well burn 1 each turn and get a point, if you're trying to maximise. So my opponent's list, as we look at my setup here, I've got Liberators there. Imperator, my only hero, so he's required obviously to bring the Annihilators down only 7 inches away from the enemy. He's also required for my call for aid to bring Liberators back to life. So if he gets killed, then I lose a decent chunk of my power. So he has to stay alive, so he's hiding behind a building along with the long strikes here. Chariot hiding a bit, and Bundo not worrying about that, and there's my in the heavens units, all 4 of them. So my opponent's army, let's bring that up on this app here, shall we? Viewing list. Okay, so it's Sylvaneth, the Glade is Heartwood, Grand Strategy take what's theirs, same as mine, and there is, now I'm going to struggle to identify exactly what's what in this, because a lot of it's within this Wildwood. So there is, I assure you, a Warsong Revenant in there. There is, there's not many units actually. So Warsong Revenant, battle line units, there's 6 Kurnoth Hunters with bows, which are here. There are 3 Kurnoth Hunters with scythes, which are there. There are 5 Tree Revenants, which I'm not sure, I don't think they're in this picture. There are 3 Revenant Seekers, which are these ones here. And that unit, particularly annoying to me, because they're the ones that very easily bring back models to nearby units, which I always find irritating. If it was up to me, I would just do away with rally and all ways of bringing back models, personally. because it just feels bad for the opponent, I think. But it's in the game, and you've got to use it. So, and obviously, it feels good when it benefits you to rally back a couple of models, but I would get rid of it, personally, and leave the raising stuff to undead and demons, probably. So, or maybe just raising up new units of actual tree spirits from the trees, something like that, something a bit flavourful, rather than just, this comes back to life because you rolled a 6. For rally, I'm talking about here. We've got, down here, Gotrek. So, Gotrek with a tree on the base, so keeping with the theme. I don't think I've ever played against Gotrek before, and what I know of him is stay away from him unless you know that you've got a really good chance of killing him. Otherwise, just don't go near him, because he's an absolute tank and murders things. Gets to re-roll everything, pretty much. He does loads of wounds, and he can attack twice. So he's just not to be messed with, unless you've got a really, really good reason to do so. Just going to cough a second here. Okay, my cough is mostly gone now, by the way. So up there, we've got the tree revenants. So, this army. Things that I look out for: abilities to teleport. They can do a lot of that between trees and overgrown terrain. They can teleport away from combat as well, potentially, on their turn, which is obviously annoying. Gotrek obviously doesn't benefit from all these nonsense rules because he's a mighty dwarf. Then, you can see overall my opponent is not covering all the objectives. I'm spread out a bit more, so I'm on most of them, and I can be on this one very easily as well. So I'm hoping to get some points early on just by being on all the objectives on my side. That's the plan. And then I'm going to push up the giant, maybe onto this one, with the chariot waiting behind his backup. I'm going to try and wait for something good to send my annihilators into. And looking at the points of this army, anything that's more expensive than the annihilators I generally consider a valid target for them to try and kill. So the dream is something like Kragnos, because he's like 3 or 4 times as much as the annihilators in points, but they can theoretically kill him in a round. So that's the dream opponent for them. Anything more expensive than them, though, is good, or anything around their cost that just seems like the enemy army hinges on it. So my opponent then declares that one of the rules of this army is that they can put +1 to hit against some of my units. So the long strikes are chosen, Bundo is chosen, and the chariot. And so I printed out the battle tactics on a sheet, a handy dandy sheet, and was ticking off which ones I'd attempted throughout the game, but I kept forgetting to take photos of it. So later on I moved back to the cards, but it's handy to have them all on a sheet as well, so you're not having to turn them over. And now that everyone's memorised the battle tactics, of course, a lot of them are going to change in the new General's Handbook very soon. So I'm given the first turn by my opponent, because against me, generally, if you're in a bit of a castle like that, and you've got things you want to protect in the middle of it, you don't want to go first and start spreading out, because then you're going to leave spaces for the annihilators to land usually, unless you've got a lot of bodies for screening. So I'm just pushing up down that way, and staying far enough away from Gotrek so that even if the Sylvaneth get the double turn, he's not really guaranteed to get in there. And I drop the Judicators down here. So the thinking with the Judicators dropping in instantly, it gets me more objectives, and also I've identified them as the dream unit for shooting at Gotrek, because they only have 1 damage per shot, and he reduces all incoming damage to 1 from attacks. So if you're targeting him with damage 2 attacks, you're wasting 50% of your power there. So Judicators, especially with the ability to do some mortal wounds as well, and get him down to his ward save. So I think they could potentially plink away at Gotrek. And then other units that I've identified as maybe being useful. If we look at the Bundo, Whalebiter and Chariot combination, they actually have multiple different attack profiles, as it were. Like different weapons that they strike with. So even though I'd be wasting a lot of their damage putting them into him, he doesn't have that many wounds, so if I can chip away at him, see how that goes. If I can actually do a bit of damage to him, I might send them into him after and see if they can finish him off. But I'm not going to just charge anything into him while he's still at full health. That would be madness. So on this side, Liberators are just chilling out in there. The Long Strikes have garrisoned this building. And I've also put Mystic Shield on them. And you can see they've had all-out attack as well. Because their shooting combined with the Annihilators coming down and charging in, we've got rid of the Kurnoths with the scythes. So the Kurnoths are slightly more expensive than the Annihilators, so I considered that a good trade. So they are dead. 1 unit down, 1 less thing to score with. And I've brought down other Liberators over here to claim this objective. So I'm making a play for all the objectives early on here. And my opponent is in this castle. So, encouraging a spread of the units, so that when the next Annihilators come down, they might have a juicier target perhaps, but we've got rid of them. They can teleport, so that's important to remember as well. So I do get maximum points because I think I just went for the easy objective with these Liberators holding this one here. Easy battle tactic. My opponent goes for Desecrate their lands, which is kind of an auto one. And you can see that I made Bundo an Unbind Bro, according to this scroll, because I needed some extra dispelling. And one of the Annihilators has gone already, that would have been a spell. So, Annihilator Corpse. And these Tree Revenants came down here. Oh yeah, you'll see that this objective's actually moved. The first thing I did with Bundo Whalebiter was, I looked at his scroll, wait a minute, he can kick objectives, let's do that. So the objective he started on, I actually booted it further away from the enemy, into the corner. Not for much of a tactical reason, I just wanted to do something with him, I thought it was funny. So, kick the objective away. And the Kurnoths with the bows have teleported over here. It was very tight on them actually fitting in between the Liberators and the Annihilators and being close enough to this piece of overgrown terrain. It was very, very tight indeed. They barely made it in there. But as they are in there, they can shoot down the Liberators. A few of them at least. And these bad boys, which are the Revenant Seekers. I'm just going to position my phone so I can actually read the screen while also facing the microphone. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So, okay. You can see that lots of the units have vacated the Wildwood now. There's just the... whoever that is, that'll be the Warsong Revenant in there, won't it? Oh, there's an Arch Revenant as well that I missed in the list. So that'll be the Arch Revenant. The Warsong Revenant, I think, is the one on the bigger base, which is hiding somewhere. I think it's that one. Okay, and you'll see these Liberators have appeared, because the Kurnoths, after shooting, charged into the remaining ones, killed them, so I used Call for Aid to bring a fresh unit down here. Because, tactically, I might have been thinking, wait for the second unit to die, because there'll be more spaces for them to be used in later, rather than having them all on the table now. But, on the other hand, he might be dead by then, so I might not get a chance to use it. I might not have the command point to use it at the time, so I'd rather just get it over with. And because he's the only hero, and I don't have a Lord Relictor, I'm not going to be able to get them into too advantageous a position anyway, if I wait till later, because it's dependent on where he's standing. And I can't teleport them. So Gotrek is working his way up. So my opponent does not hold more objectives than me, so I've got a tiny lead after the first turn. Okay, so you'll see here that Bundo has gone into Gotrek. That's because the Judicators shot at him, and they did their job actually. They did a couple of wounds to him. So I thought, you know what? Here's my plan. Gotrek has 2 wounds on him. I'm never going to kill him if he's allowed to use his heroic recovery, because he's just going to keep getting his wounds back. If I send Bundo Whalebiter into Gotrek, do a couple of wounds to him in combat, he can't then heroic recover, he won't kill me in 1 round, then the Judicators will be able to shoot him at least another couple of times. I'll have another round of fighting him. So, I'm thinking that could whittle him down. We'll see whether that comes to fruition, though. Because as you see, Bundo completely failed with all his attacks. I don't think it was even down to the saves. I think Bundo just failed. He takes quite a lot of wounds, but he's not dead. That's after being attacked twice, by the way. Or is it? Yeah, because I changed... I was counting down in wounds, I think, and then I started counting up to match up with the diminished power on the War Scroll. So I think for this game I was counting down. I even used all-out attack, but still didn't do very well. I don't think he did a single wound to Gotrek. And obviously, if you're a Gotrek player, you're thinking the perfect thing you want to fight is a giant, because it doesn't have that many attacks, and each one does a lot of damage, which you're going to be reducing to 1, of course. And it's got a lot of wounds, so you can just deal out 1 billion wounds to it, and it's still going to be standing, so you can attack again and do 1 billion more wounds. But, as I explained, I'm hoping to chip away at him, stop him doing heroic recovery by standing there, and we'll see. The chariot steamed into these tree revenants in the corner, and I think it utterly failed with its mortal wounds. So most of them are still alive, which is annoying. And that's how the battlefield is looking at the moment. So, did I bring more Annihilators down yet? There's no picture of them yet. So I'm not sure if they are coming in yet. I think they're waiting. So, for the record, I believe... Did I actually win the... I can't remember if I actually won the roll and decided to go next, or whether my opponent made me go next. I think I won the roll, and I was a bit torn on it because the enemy are quite far away in various places, and I would like to get a double rather than be doubled. Annihilators is a really good unit for getting the double with. But anyway, I only picked up 2 points because I failed my battle tactic in this turn. And I can't even remember which one it was now because I didn't take a picture of the sheet. But it may well have been eye for an eye. And yeah, okay, I remember what happened. So you'll see that Annihilator there. I totally forgot to do anything with that Annihilator. Forgot to roll his charge, so he's just doing nothing. I did remember at the end of the turn. And I believe I've brought down Annihilators over here somewhere, but they fail their charge. They fail their rerollable 7-inch charge. So I fail my battle tactic, don't kill a unit. And in the next turn, you can see that Bundo is getting whittled down. He's only on a couple of wounds now against Gotrek, so he's going to die soon. The last Annihilator dies. The last Annihilator was going to charge into the Arch Revenant here, but just forgot it existed, and dead. So my opponent chose gaining momentum for that round, pick an enemy unit, and control more objectives. So you can see that these Annihilators here, they now backed away from the enemy to give themselves a bit of a chance. As you can see the 3-inch marker there, they backed away 3 inches, made it a 6-inch charge, because they failed their charge in the previous turn. And the Kurnoths charged into the long strikes in the building. I managed to shoot a couple of them down with Unleash Hell, which is fun. And then they kill all but one of them, so I move it into the tower for cinematic purposes. And Bundo gets killed, of course. And you can see Gotrek is still only on 2 wounds. So, totally disastrous attempt. I feel like you have to try and kill him at least once in your life before you realise it's just ridiculous. And he's not a model that you should ever try and be in combat with, probably. If anyone knows a specific unit that's just really good at killing Gotrek, then let me know. But otherwise, probably just best to avoid him entirely. But that's not very fun, is it? You're taking a giant and you see Gotrek on the table. The fun thing to do is to go in there and try and squash him. Chariot is obviously beating up the tree revenants quite handily, but it's not contributing too much to the game back there. And I'm not too thrilled with how it's going because of the Annihilator's failed charge mainly. So I'd hope that the Annihilators charging in would have been able to kill those 3 Revenant Seekers there. And that would stop enemy units from being regenerated so easily later. And also it would just take away a unit. And then the Annihilators would still be alive, but as it is, not looking great. So, Chariot, I think that model might have failed its battle shock there. So the chariot is reigning supreme in that combat. So my opponent actually failed the battle tactic in that turn after failing to kill the nominated unit, I think, which may well have been the long strikes, perhaps. It was alive on 1 wound. That sounds about right. So you can see that this is the proving ground at the moment, with the adjudicators on it. And you can see I'm hugging the back of the objectives here because Gottrek's right there. So I still want to hold the objective and contest it, but I don't want to be right up in there about to get killed. My opponent gets the double then, and goes for barrage through enemy lines, which is an auto because Gottrek's right there, just runs in, and so does this hero. And yeah, it's just an easy 4 points. Not a huge amount of action. You can see I've actually taken a picture of my battle tactics now. So in this one, I've gone for desecrate their lands, and I accomplish it, I think, because it's quite easy. And there's not actually much going on here because I'm just shuffling around, not getting into combat because I'm just trying to score points and maximise. So then the next turn, I actually score 5 points, which is when I went for barrage through enemy lines, which was also an easy one for me. You'll see pictures of the fallout of that in a minute, but then in the next round after that, my opponent's going for outmuscle, so pick Galatian veterans that are contesting an objective and stop them contesting it, and it has to be the proving grounds. So it's this one. They want to get rid of the adjudicators. These Hernoths, not revenants. And you can see what I was doing here, why I didn't necessarily feel urgently requiring photos for this particular scene. So I was just hiding behind the building with the one remaining annihilator and the chariot, and holding this building to get the battle tactic, for example, and barge through enemy lines. Yeah, so I was just avoiding combat mostly. Gottrek has made his way into the Liberators now, which is nice. Actually, I think this is the current proving ground. So Gottrek's going to kill them and get the battle tactic. And the Seekers have chased down the Annihilator and the Chariot into this objective. And my opponent does get maximum points for that round. So then, looks like I've gone for this one's mine, because I think that's the only battle tactic I can physically complete in this round, based on who's left. So I just have to pick an enemy unit. I think I picked that one, and try and shoot it down and then make a long charge, because I don't think there was physically any other battle tactic I could complete based on the units remaining. So, went for it, did some wounds with shooting, but failed the long charge. So yeah, those Liberators died and gave up the battle tactic last turn, and obviously I failed mine, but just trying to score where I can. And then at the end of the game, my opponent gets a bonus point for burning one of the objectives, and I've updated that to a 3 correctly for the grand strategy. So I'll just have a look at the final results, tell you what the score was. So based on the victory point differential, I did have a bit of a lead going on until right near the end there, but then my opponent jumped ahead because I just ran out of units in useful positions and hadn't killed enough throughout the game. It resulted in a 15-5 win. Nope, that's wrong. Yeah, it was smaller than that. It was a 13-7 win for my opponent. Yeah, I was looking at the wrong line there. So, what did I learn from this game? Main thing, just don't bother trying to kill Gottrek. What's the point? You might as well just run away from him. So, if we go back a bit, I want a bit of a wide shot. So here, up in this corner, I could have easily just had Bundo Whalebiter sitting up there. Nothing else apart from Gottrek would have been a threat to him, really. I could have then burnt that objective, started marching across to the next one, eat things, march across, because Gottrek was making a beeline for my half anyway. So if he falls back to chase a giant, that means that's the only thing he's ever going to fight for the whole game, because he's not going to be able to go to the middle, then double back, and then come all the way down here again. So he'd be committing to just taking out one model, and that would be his entire purpose for the game, which I could probably live with. So giant could have been used better. Could have easily just thrown the chariot into Gottrek if I wanted to throw something in there for no reason. Could have shot down the revenants in the corner there instead. maybe. Other than that, not too much to report. I think the first use of Annihilators was fine, getting rid of that Burnoth unit there. The second one's obviously failed their charge. They would have got rid of the Seekers, which would have changed things, obviously. And because it was only in the last turn or two that I was failing, then that could have actually been fairly decisive. So it may have not mattered that Bundo threw his life away going after Gotrek. Because if I'd killed those Seekers with the Annihilators, it would have been quite spicy round at the top there. Okay, moving on to the next game. And in round 2, we're in the Prize of Gallet. So let me have a look at my opponent's list for this game. It is Stormcast versus Stormcast. So in this scenario, you have the 5 objectives here, and they activate throughout the game. So in the first turn, one of the central objectives gets activated, and then after that, any of them are eligible. So it's just whoever goes second in the battle round decides which one becomes active. So, here we go. There's my setup. We've got Bundo right in the middle because there's just a big line of 3 objectives there. Seems like a great place for him. Chariot on the flank. Long strikes here. There are enemy long strikes. So, I've got more drops than my opponent. Fewer drops, should I say. So, I'm going to be able to decide who goes first. So I've put the long strikes out of range of the enemy long strikes. So even if they move, they won't be able to shoot me. And then I'm going to make them go first. Because that means the only thing they can shoot is Liberators or Bundo. And then if they want to do that, they're going to be in range for me to shoot them. So it's kind of bait. Whether it would be a good thing for them to do to get some wounds on the giant early and then die, who knows, but I would rather kill the long strikes and then have the entire game for mine to shoot, rather than the enemy long strikes being alive. So that's kind of the plan there. The Lord Imperator is just hiding because, again, he's my only hero. He's really useful for various things that I need throughout the game, especially bringing down the Annihilators closer to the enemy. And my opponent's list contains, well, it's Hallowed Knights, and the special rule for that subfaction is that they can potentially fight on death, which is very nice. So, you can see on a tray over there, the Celestant Prime is in the heavens, and he's actually got some pretty tasty stats. I think I've overlooked him in the past, but I can exclusively reveal I do own a Celestant Prime now, on sprue, and that was my Christmas present from Mr. Remington, actually. So I'll have to get that assembled and painted at some point. See, it's quite a fun unit to use as well. And one of the few things that has Rend 3 in the army as well, which is always nice. And in fact, this army I'm up against here has the other source of notable Rend 3 as well, which we'll get to shortly. So, let's have a look at the enemy setup. So, you can see the other source of it right here. It's the Stardrake's Reign of Stars shooting attack has Rend 3 as well. So, there's also a Lord Castellant, who is, I think, on the tray there. Have I got a picture of the tray? Yeah. He's in there somewhere. Anyway, and he's got armour of a Silvered Sigmarite. The Lord Celestant on Stardrake is the General. And that is the Celestine Hammer, Master of Magic, Arcane Tome, Celestial Instincts, Mound Trait, which lets you, I think that's the get out of combat and still behave as if you didn't move out of combat. I think that's what that one is. And Celestial Blade spell. There's also Gardus, who gives ward saves out willy-nilly. Battle line. There are 2 units of 5 Vanquishers and 1 unit of 10 Vanquishers. So you can see there's 5 there, 5 there, and then there's 10, I think, off the table in the tray, ready to come down later. There is the Long Strikes, which I also looked at, and 5 Vigilors, which are here. So they're a decent-ish shooting unit, but people don't necessarily rate them that highly. So my opponent has got the Battle Regiment and Bounty Hunters, so more drops than me, so I'm going to decide to make him go first. And I've gone for my usual setup in the heavens with this list. Adjudicators, Liberators, and all the Annihilators. By the way, if anyone's watching this live, feel free to comment. And don't forget to like the video as well. I can see you sitting there not liking the video, you heathens. So you can see there's a Stardrake wing there. Okay, so the spiky ball represents the proving ground. The smooth ball represents an objective that has been activated. So the central one has been activated by me because I want my opponent to put models there so Bundo Whalebiter can charge in and eat them. That's the plan. And I'm getting rid of this as the proving ground because it won't be able to be a proving ground later on then, because my opponent has got a more potent fighting Galatian veterans than I do, I would say. So, in the first turn, there's a Mystic Shield put onto the Stardrake. Against the odds is selected for the nice low-hanging fruit battle tactic. And 5 of these guys, 5 Vanquishers, move up onto the objective in the middle. The Long Strikes move a little bit so they can shoot at Bundo, and they've knocked him down. Let's see, how many wounds is he on? 25. So I think with the combined shooting of the Stardrake's Rain of Stars and the Long Strikes, they've knocked 9 wounds off him. So that's a decent start, actually. But still not really worried about that. So against the odds, successful, but there's only 1 active objective at this point, so you can only really get 4 in the first round. Or unless you complete a battle tactic with a bonus point somehow. So first thing I did with Bundo was kick one of the objectives further up the battlefield, so they're much closer together now. So this one here isn't active, but it's been moved closer to this one. Mystic Shield on Bundo. Sent him straight into those Vanquishers, ate them, took over the area. And I moved my Long Strikes up and gunned down the enemy Long Strikes, so that plan has worked out nicely. Liberators in front of them as a bit of a screen. And I don't think I've done much else. I haven't got any Annihilators down yet, by the looks of things, because I didn't think there was really a juicy place to put them, because remember the Vanquishers were down here. So I don't think I had a really good spot at the back because of these Long Strikes that were here as well. I didn't have a good place to land behind or in front of the Stardrake, and that would be the main thing I want to hit. So I get the second turn, get the double, and go for Desecrate their lands, which I select this boulder here, which is a very easy one. Bundo Whalebiter goes into the Stardrake, Annihilators go into the Stardrake. As you can see, the Annihilators are all dead. And I even put Finest Hour on Bundo, because Mystic Shield and Mystic Shield on the... Did this also have Finest Hour on it? I think the Stardrake may also have had Finest Hour played on it at the same time, so it's got all that armour built up, and all my rend is only -2. So, eventually, I did some wounds to it, knocked it down to 10, but that's not really a lot. The Annihilators barely did any mortal wounds on the charge. I think I rolled something like 10, but only did mortal wounds with 2 of them, which is very, very poor. So they ended up getting killed for not much return, and Bundo is stuck in there, and yeah, not that much damage done, sadly. Would have been nice. But I have got this piece of terrain by dropping some Liberators down next to it, and the Chariot's moved up there as well. And you can see one of the Vigilors appears to be dead. I don't know if it's just fallen over or whether I killed it. I think Bundo might have thrown some debris at them. I've also brought down the Judicators here, who also fired at the Stardrake. Because it had Mystic Shield in it, I just wanted to get mortal wounds rather than regular wounds. So the Judicators were there to plink some mortal wounds on it before combat, and I think they actually did a couple, which makes it even more disappointing that the combat yielded nothing. But I did get my battle tactic, and I hold objectives. So, there we go, 5. Hold all the objectives, or all the active ones. My opponent choosing Desecrate their lands on this ship. So the active objectives are these 2, which is why the Judicators drop down here. My opponent obviously has things in the heaven that can come down, so desecrating my lands isn't going to be tricky. And just land some stuff around here. I have got models within range of it, so it'll need to be a bit of an investment of stuff down there. So you can see I've got Sons of Behemat dice there, preparing for that army, and I thought it was apt to use those while Bundo is in the army. So my opponent drops down the 10 model unit of Vanquishers between the Chariot and the Judicators there. It's going to be a stretch for them to make the charge, because obviously they're going to need a 9, with them not being annihilators with the Lord Imperator, so they can't be within 7 inches. So on average, they should probably fail. However, someone that should not fail is the Celestant Prime. So I haven't really looked at his rules because I've never faced him and haven't owned him until just now. So my problem is that he can just choose to roll a 12 for his charge if he wants, which I thought was more of a Zinch thing, but apparently he can do it as well. He can choose to change a couple of dice for either the charge, the hit roll, or something else. But yeah, he can just choose the result. So he can just choose to make it into his combat when he drops down, which is nice. And I think because he's coming down in this turn, he has something like 5 attacks. If he waits another turn, he gets 7 attacks for the whole game, but my opponent obviously decided that he needed to come down now. And he's going to go after the Lord Imperator, because that would prevent me from bringing down Annihilators close to the enemy. Which would be a big deal, and would be a good reason to bring him down now, if that's going to work. So you can see that I have Mystic Shielded the Lord Imperator, because I think he's the victim of the stars from the Star Drake as well. So, look at that, they're moving into the Judicators. They made it. Celestant Prime obviously makes it into the Imperator. However, what it looks like is that my opponent had a change of heart after the Star Drake got in there, and these guys were then going in. They decided not to do that, and instead they were going to go up after the Chariot, and the Vigilors also joined in with that. So, all-out defense and Mystic Shield on the Lord Imperator, because I need him to survive. All-out attack on the Prime. Takes some wounds, doesn't die, that's the most important thing, so I can still bring my Annihilators down closer. Chariot doesn't die either against all this, which is nice, and then I target the Vigilors because they're just a smaller number of them, so I could actually kill the unit. The Lord Imperator does nothing to the Prime though. And this piece of terrain is desecrated because the Star Drake's right there. And so, this is something that actually came up in the previous game that I just learned. You can't contest multiple things with one unit. You can't stretch across multiple objectives, you can't control an objective and also control a terrain piece at the same time. So the Star Drake can't hold this objective and also complete the battle tactic. So he just chooses to complete the battle tactic because that's worth more victory points. But obviously, it's useful to be aware of that, which is something I only just learned. So, not many points scored, only the battle tactic I think, because my opponent does not control any of these objectives because he chose to control the battle tactic terrain instead. So, I've got a nice lead after 2 goes, and on to the next round. So there's some Liberators standing there. It's not that interesting a picture. Oh yeah, it just shows that they're holding that. And this becomes the proving ground. So, head to head. My opponent has chosen the head to head because he's going first in the next battle round. So I've chosen to make this the proving ground because my opponent does not control this, which means the Star Drake can't control it. So one of these units is going to have to control it. This one here, pretty much. So they're going to have to maybe move out of combat to do it, which is fine by me. So head-to-head means that these Vanquishers want to kill these Liberators. I thought this was a bit of a risky move. I thought it was maybe too risky, because that's not a very powerful unit, really. And 5 Liberators, they're not great, but they're not the easiest thing to shift for a fellow mediocre unit. So I think this is a bold move, picking head-to-head here. I wouldn't have gone for this, probably. Unless you've got some shooting to whittle them down with first. But even then, that's just going to make it a more difficult charge for them, because there's no guarantee they'll actually make it to the Liberators to fight them. So, Star Drake, Mystic Shield again, just to keep it alive. And the Star Drake is moving this way, to try and eat those Liberators as well. But the problem is, you wouldn't want to fight with the Star Drake first, because you might kill them all, and then you wouldn't achieve the battle tactic because the vanquishers wouldn't have anyone to fight. So the 10 vanquishers move on to the proving ground, which they kind of had to do if they wanted to take that objective and get some points, which means the chariot is going to survive the turn, most likely. And the vanquishers do go in, they do make it, but they do not kill all the liberators. So there's still 1.5 of them left with all-out defense. So the battle tactic has been failed, and the Star Drake then has a nibble on them as well. I think the Rain of Stars killed off some long strikes in this turn. You can see the Lord Castellant has dropped down there, and Gardas is there, I think. So the objective isn't active yet, but they're ready. And the chariot, I think the chariot is actually dead. Was the chariot targeted by Rain of Stars, maybe? Or a spell? It may have been a spell. If it was down to its last wound, it could have been an arcane bolt, possibly. Yes, the chariot is dead. So head-to-head was failed, but my opponent was able to control some objectives. This one and this one. So holds 2, holds more than me, but no battle tactics. So 2 failed battle tactics so far, which is often fatal in these games. So, okay, you can see outmuscle has been selected there. So this unit, I wanted to outmuscle them, get them off this objective. So it's not often you get the opportunity to use outmuscle because it requires a Galatian veteran unit to be on a proving ground. And when they are, if you think you can kill them, it's a great time to use it because battle tactics, I struggle to get 5 in a game usually. I can somewhat reliably get 4, but it's rare to do 5. If you can get outmuscle, it becomes a lot more likely that you'll get 5. So this unit on here are a prime target for that battle tactic, and I've still got Annihilators to drop. So the Annihilators come in, munch, they lose 1, and the Liberators are there as well to mop them up. So got my battle tactic for outmuscling those vanquishers, and 1 Annihilator was killed. So the fighting on death is really useful here, because I can kill them all, but then they can fight me, and obviously Annihilators can't take much of a hit back. So one of them does die. Bundo's just making his way over here just to be a threat, and staying on that objective, which is active at the moment. So I'm going to score some decent points in this round. Everyone else just moved away from combat. So the Lord Imperator moved away from the Celestant Prime, the final Liberator moved away from everyone there, because I just didn't want to die this turn, want to survive another turn with these units. And then, if I was to get the double, I would get another turn of them not dying, which is nice. So got my outmuscle, building up a bit of a lead still. My opponent does get the first crack at the next round and goes eye for an eye, which is a very easy one because there's a Liberator left with 1 wound. So an Arcane Bolt or anything will just take him down instantly. So Mystic Shield again on the Star Drake. And the Liberator's going to die. There he goes. Liberator's dead, so battle tactic achieved, eye for an eye. Celestant Prime is 9 inches away from the... Okay, I remember what this is. So when that final Liberator died, I cashed in my battle tactic and brought some fresh Liberators in, within 12 inches of the Imperator, 9 inches away from the enemy. So those are the fresh Liberators, with the call for aid. The Liberators up here are just chilling out on the objective, and the Star Drake eats them. Down here you can see this, the Celestant Prime goes into the newly spawned Liberators and kills 3 of them, and Vanquishers are fighting against the Imperator. No decisive outcome there yet. And the Castellant and Gardas aren't doing much, but they're just sitting there, waiting, biding their time, and the Imperator's dead. So, I've got Bundo left, I've got 2 Liberators left. I don't have anything else left, but I've got a decent lead in the game. So, eye for an eye. Oh yeah, so I took a picture of it on the wrong side. So I go eye for an eye as well, because Bundo can definitely kill a unit. He kills that unit. So that's going to get me my battle tactic. And because I've been holding these objectives for a while, I'm going to hold 1, I'm going to hold 2, and I'm going to hold more than my opponent. Because I think I've been holding this one for quite a while. At least one of these I've been holding for a while as well. So when Mr. Whalebiter kills them, they did try to redeploy to get away, as you would, but he did catch up with them and was also able to stay on the objective here. So that means I would think I was holding 3 at that point. So I'm holding this one, and I was holding this one previously. And then I take this one when I kill them. You can see there he is, just inside the objective zone. So another maximum points with barely anything left. And the next turn I go for gaining momentum, pick an enemy unit, and I want to kill that and control more objectives, because I got the first crack at turn 5. And what did I kill? Let's see. I can't actually see what I killed to get those points, but I'm sure it exists because I got maximum. I might actually be showing the wrong objective there. So my opponent went for gaining momentum, killed Bundo, and holds lots of objectives now, so gets maximum for the last turn, and gets the grand strategy, which was take what's theirs, the same as mine, and I'm not going to get mine, but not enough to catch up. So I have got 24 points to 20. So, overall, successful game in terms of objective scoring, building up a lead and holding on to it, and taking advantage of getting a double turn, I think, at the end, to score all the points. And I focused Bundo Whalebiter on holding objectives throughout the game, rather than chasing things down away from the objectives. Because I realised I was in the lead and just had to keep scoring big each turn, and there was no way I could be caught. Once these 2 battle tactics were failed, I knew I just had to keep scoring, and even with the grand strategy, it wasn't enough to catch up. So I only had 2 Liberators left alive, but that's enough for the win. And in tournament terms, the margin of the win, it was a 12-8 win. So this is the 20-0 system, by the way, if I didn't mention it. So if you win a huge amount and don't concede many victory points, you can get 20. If it's a draw, it's 10-10, and then it just moves in either direction based on the margin of victory points. So in round 3, we're playing close to the chest, which I don't like at all because it requires lots of measuring out of weird places on the battlefield, because you can only set up like within 9 away from the enemy's territory or something, so you have to draw out a weird line on the battlefield. It's just annoying to set up, and because of that, I'm not a fan of the scenario. Also, it's weird to keep track of which objective is yours and which one is the enemy's, because they're on the borderline, which is another annoying thing. And you pick an alpha out of your 3 objectives each turn, and if your opponent controls that one, then they get more points. And that's about it. I would just prefer that this scenario disappear. If you want to keep something similar but make the map a bit more straightforward, that's fine by me. And it's on a very attractive Tzeentch board, and I'm up against, let me just fire up their list here, against Slaves to Darkness, Host of the Everchosen. So, this is a very interesting list with lots of stuff I've never played against before, which is always educational, and that's why it's handy to go to tournaments. You get exposed to lots of different armies. So, I'll go through that when I get to the close-up photos of it. You can see I've got my deployment laid out here. I've got Liberators up there ready to leap onto an objective. I've got the Imperator hiding. I've got the Long Strikes in range to strike. I've got the Chariot ready. I've got Whalebiter ready to steam in towards objectives as well, mostly this way. And everyone else is on the sidelines as usual. So, here is the enemy army. And leaders, we have 2 Chaos Sorcerer Lords. And it might be tough to pick them out amongst this rabble. That might be one there. Maybe one there. So 2 Sorcerer Lords. One has the Mark of Slaanesh, has the Arcane Tome, has Levitate as a spell, which lets units fly. The other one has Mark of Slaanesh as well, and Binding Damnation spell. And don't ask me what that does. There's also a Slaves to Darkness Demon Prince, which is right here. And that has the Mark of Chaos Nurgle. So Nurgle makes things tougher to fight in combat, if I remember correctly. And Slaanesh gives them a different benefit. So the ones that you want to fight in combat, probably not the Nurgle ones if you get the option. The battle line units, there are 10 Chaos Warriors with the Mark of Nurgle, which are, I think, the yellow ones. There are 2 units of Chaos Chosen, one with the Mark of Nurgle, one with the Mark of Slaanesh, and they are reinforced, both of them, so they're 480 point units here and here, so obscenely expensive. They have 3 wounds each. Mark of Nurgle one in particular, very difficult to destroy, and I'm looking at those units and thinking, yes, that's a worthy target for Annihilators. However, Annihilators, even with their nice damage output, not going to have enough damage to chew through 30 wounds, especially with the Mark of Nurgle. So, if I'm going to kill one of these units, I'm going to have to focus in on them and shoot them at the same time. And another thing, they can quite easily come back to life. So, I think they rally on, is it 5 they rally on? I think it's definitely better than the usual rallying number. So, they're really powerful, really strong, and really tough, and they can come back to life if you don't kill them all. So, gonna have to strike hard, and strike fast, and strike first. That's the plan here. Then we've got 9 Corvus Cabal, and I think they're off the table. And I'll spoil now that my opponent forgets to bring them onto the table. I forgot they existed completely until I was reminded that they were sitting there off the table in the corner. So I've done it before with Liberators, I think, forgot to bring them in. I haven't done it with Annihilators because they're too important to my strategy. So anytime you have a cheap, crummy little unit off the table, it's so easy to forget them because they're not an integral part of your plan. So yeah, make sure you leave them in your eye line. There's also 9 Untamed Beasts, which are here, which are also very cheap and just not that great. And that is it, apart from the War Shrine, which is Slaanesh War Shrine. So they look big and impressive, these models, but they're actually both lower than 200 points, the Demon Prince and the War Shrine. So all the meat is in the 2 chosen units. 2 chosen units of 10. Very, very powerful. So if I can get to kill them, that would be great. Everything else is significantly less of a threat. So what do I want to do with these Liberators? Other than hop on an objective, I want to spread the enemy out. Because as it is, if I want to go head on into the Chosen, because if I'm going to hit them, I have to hit them with multiple things at the same time. If I could hit them with Bundo and a Chariot and some shooting, that would be good. If I could hit them with Annihilators and a Chariot and some shooting, that would be good as well. If I could draw maybe some Chaos Warriors over there, that means I could hit them from the front and maybe land behind them as well. So, just adding a bit of temptation. It could just draw over the crummy unit that would probably lose to the Liberators in a fight, but we'll see. So, my first battle tactic, desecrate their lands. Because of the weird setup of this scenario, of this battle plan, this piece of terrain is actually in enemy territory. So, just desecrating it immediately with Bundo, with a run. Just run straight on it, onto the objective, desecrates the lands, easy. And I've done some shooting, and you'll see that there's some damage done to the Demon Prince there. I think that's damage. It might not be, actually. Oh no, I think I shot off some Chaos Warriors. I think they were only thing that was actually in range initially. I dropped down the Judicators there as well. So I'm trying to thin out this unit a bit. Because if they don't get drawn over here, I just want to make a hole in the line so I've got space to attack beyond the Chaos Warriors. So I do get 6 points for that round, because I also hold the Alpha objective, which my opponent nominated this one. I'm not sure if that's actually correct, because I think technically this objective is mine. So I think we did that wrong. I don't think my opponent's played this scenario before. So nominated this as the alpha objective, and because of the weirdness of it, the weirdness of the shape, I just forgot that this one wasn't an objective belonging to my opponent as well. So I took this objective and got a bonus point. Anyway, onto my opponent's turn 1. Against the odds is selected, nice easy one. Typical start. If you've got a chance to save against the odds, then it's good to do so because it's easy to complete it later as well. But often in the first turn there's not much else you can do if you're not moving out that much. So, look at this spread here. Very interesting. The stuff I want to attack with Annihilators, either the big stuff, but these two big things are actually significantly cheaper than Annihilators, so it wouldn't maybe be the greatest trade. The War Shrine does buff nearby units though. However, because they're in a long line, what my brain immediately leaps to is, wait a minute, I've got a spell that stops enemies piling in. If I cast it there, and attack with Annihilators at one end, and maybe a Chariot at the other end, they're only going to be able to hit back with maybe 2 models. So that could be amazing. So that is my plan now. My opponent gets 5 points because not controlling the alpha, which I picked an alpha that was just really far away. My round 2, against the odds. The Imperator is just going to stay there and hold that one. And look at this. So, a total crunch, as I described. I cast Starfall with the Imperator right here, stop these 2 units from piling in. So the Chosen weren't able to do much at all to retaliate, which is why all 3 Annihilators are still alive. And the Chariot hasn't taken too many wounds, and most of them are dead. I would have liked to have killed them, but I don't think I did that many wounds with their impact hits. I think this tournament, the impact hits have been very disappointing. So I just haven't rolled very well for them. I would have liked to have killed the unit. The Long Strikes and Judicators have been thinning down these units as well, but obviously they're still up, so not that well. Bundo decided to go into the other unit of Chosen. Not necessarily because I thought it would be a great idea of him to fight them for the whole game, but because I wanted to stop them coming this way. I think this is a key area. If I can clear out these 2 units and stop the other unit coming in to help, if they're just fighting on their own, I can quite easily avoid 1 unit, hopefully, for the game. That would be nice. And I'd make a massive hole in the enemy line there. And these big monsters aren't as threatening as they may appear. So my Liberators have backed away from this objective here, because they don't want to get attacked by anything yet. I just want to keep them alive. I only kept them there initially because I wanted to jump on this objective at the start of the game to get the points, but they don't need to now, so they're just hiding back a bit. And because Bundo took so many wounds, because I found out that Chosen can actually attack twice, which I didn't know beforehand, but with that information maybe I wouldn't have charged him in there, because he did take quite a few wounds and didn't kill that many of them. Yeah, because with them being 3 wounds each, the whole stuff in the pants he has to roll double. So yeah, the Star Drake would be much better at eating Chosen, because that just has to roll, I think, above their wounds characteristic rather than double to eat them. So I think this strategy is paid off quite nicely here, with the spell being cast to Starfall and then attacking both ends of a long line. So that's something I'll try to replicate in future against similar armies, because I really like that. And so I've got 4 points for that turn, because I don't hold more objectives than my opponent. But you'll see that I've kicked another one of my objectives just because I like doing that. Kicked it back here, further away from the enemy. There is actually a tactical reason to do it in this game, because the enemy are pretty much foot slogging it across. They don't have any way to teleport, so pushing the objectives further away from them. Onto my opponent's next turn, and desecrating my lands. This terrain here wants to be desecrated, which is why those beast, what are they even called? Untamed beasts have just latched onto this piece of terrain here, not attacked the Annihilators. So it's rare that Annihilators come down and don't immediately get attacked by everything. Chosen move out of combat, you may notice. That's because not only did they just not want to die, which they probably would with that few models, they also want to be alive so that if they get another turn before they're fighting again, they can bring some back with Rally. And it's a significant amount you're bringing back with each one, because obviously it's 3 wounds each, and they're pretty tough. So Bundo gets killed, the Demon Prince and the Chosen team up and take him down. And the Chaos Warriors fighting the Chariot, they do some wounds. But these Chosen are the ones that I really would have liked to have killed last round, and feel like I well could have done. So I'm still slightly in the lead. And I pick for battle tactic outmuscle. Outmuscle these guys on the proving ground. Because this was chosen as the proving ground by my opponent, presumably, because I'm going first in the round. So I'm going to outmuscle them, charge the Annihilators in, kill a 90-point unit, get my battle tactic. Looking back, maybe not the best idea, because what I could be doing with the Annihilators is killing these units and not worrying about that complete garbage unit there. So I think this is actually a bad move. What I should do is just let the Liberators fight them, not put a battle tactic into killing them, and just concentrate on throwing the Annihilators in and whittling these units down even more. In combination with my shooting, I could probably kill those units this turn. But instead I decided to go for battle tactics. So battle tactics are obviously a really important part of this game because it's 2 victory points a turn, which is huge over the course of the game. However, I feel in this situation I had a chance to strike at these units while they're diminished before they get healed back up, and I decided to prioritise battle tactics over that, which I do not think was the right move. And obviously with it being the proving ground, I need a Liberator to dip his toe in there to control it. So I do get some nice points. My opponent chooses barge through enemy lines, which is an auto. And then I do the same thing. Or do I? Do I pick eye for an eye? Yeah, there was a couple of missing pictures there. So you'll see that the Annihilators are dead because the Chosen, look how many there are now. There was only 3 in that unit and now there's at least 7. So they rallied 1 billion of their troops, stormed in there, killed the Annihilators, and the Chaos Warriors down to 3. You can see I'm backing away with my shooting units by this point as well. The Judicators are dead though. I think the Demon Prince ate them. Is it the Demon Prince? Well, the Demon Prince is now chasing down Liberators, who are intentionally staying out of combat, so I'm running out of units now. And I feel like there's a pivotal point of the game that was missed in the photos there, but it's not actually that much action. So really, the main thing that happened was the Chosen swelled back up in numbers and killed the Annihilators. The Imperatant is around there, so he's not dead at this point. But I'm running out of units, and my Liberators can't stay on this objective because they wanted to run out of combat with the Demon Prince so they can survive for another round. The Long Strikes are still alive, but there's Chosen down here as well, the ones that dealt with Bundo. So I'm only able to get 1 point for the turn, because I couldn't get eye for an eye, I couldn't kill a unit, I couldn't finish off those Chaos Warriors, which is what I think I was doing with my shooting. And yeah, terrible turn there for me. And my opponent in the next turn kicks head to head and wants to kill my Liberators with these Chosen. And these Chosen make it into the Long Strikes. Do they lose any to Unleash Hell? Yeah, I think no. And up here, Liberators are dead, battle tactic accomplished. And next round, all I can do is get 1 point because we've got a wider shot to show you. So these Liberators, all I can do in my last turn, because they're pretty much all I've got left, they can just sit on this objective without angering the Demon Prince and score me a point. That's all I can do, just trying to maximise. So that's what I do, get a point. My opponent goes for gaining momentum, kills a unit, and gets some points, gets the grand strategy, and there you go. I've got some Liberators left alive. Got these 3, those 2 are dead. So, there you go. It is a defeat, and it all turned very quickly, very suddenly. If you look at this, it was looking good up until there, where I only scored that 1 point. So I think the big downfall was not moving in for the kill on the Chosen when they were down to 3 models, and instead going after the really awful unit up there, the beasts, untamed beasts. I think that was a total waste of time, so it was pointless getting those 2 battle tactic points if I was then unable to score any more points on objectives for the rest of the game. So should have gone in, tried to kill those units when I had the chance. I feel like the Chosen probably should have been dead earlier anyway, but I still could have moved in there and finished them off, and used my shooting more wisely to focus in on the wounded units as well. So if you look how many models are left in these units that I actually whittled all the way down, they've come back, and those are the main things that I prioritised with my targeting. So I ended up not killing that much because of that, because they were coming back to life vigorously. So that resulted in a 15-5 loss because of those abysmal last 2 turns. So it was looking very healthy up until there, and then suddenly, wow. So it's all very well scoring battle tactics, but it's also important not to do so at the expense of your future chances overall in the game. It's like you're playing 2 games. You're playing a game of your units versus your opponent's units, killing each other, getting in position to kill each other, and then you're also playing a game of positioning for battle tactics and for scoring in the scenario. And if you over-prioritise one of those, you can take your eye off the ball with the other one. So in the previous game, for example, I feel like my opponent maybe was prioritising killing my stuff too much and took his eye off the ball on a couple of battle tactics and ended up losing because of that, maybe. In this game, I was definitely prioritising battle tactics too much and not putting enough focus on killing off the enemy, which is obviously the primary goal. Okay, so that's the end of the event. 3 games in the bag for the Stormcast. First time I've taken the Allied Mercenary Gargant to a tournament, and he was a lot of fun to use. I don't know whether he's particularly that optimal for Stormcast. He's very expensive, and he serves a purpose, but I think he's not necessarily that useful. He's a lot of fun though, so I would definitely consider taking him again. The main reason I would possibly not get round to taking him again is just that I own so many Stormcast units, and it's hard to justify putting in a mercenary unit when I've just got so many of them sitting there. Stardrake hasn't seen much action in a while. I've even got more units to paint. I've got Krondys sitting on the painting table as well that I haven't worked on yet. Other than that, for Age of Sigmar, I'm also working on my Sons of Behemat army, as people may know, because I've got my 2 Kings of War Night Stalker Shadow Hulks, and my bases have actually arrived from war bases. So, on the 75mm square base for Kings of War, I've ordered round bases, Gargant size, Mega Gargant size, with a square slot in the centre for them to sit in. So, there'll be multi-purpose giants, and I'm working on a 3rd one at the moment, and then I've got some mini Gargants working on as well at the same time. Those won't necessarily be multi-purpose, those will just be for the Age of Sigmar side of it, but they are going to be a lot of hideously mutated Gargants ready for the gaming table. And as there are a lot of tournaments at the TSN Arena in Nottingham, I won't be limited by having to use GW models like I would be at Warhammer World events. There is a Warhammer World event coming up in a few weeks though, which is only 1,000 points I think, and I'm going to take Stormcast, but I haven't picked a list yet. So if anyone's got any tips for 1,000 point Stormcast tournament lists based on models that you know that I own, then feel free to unleash them in the comments. And don't forget to like this video, by the way. If you've got any feedback on any of these games, if you're going to leave feedback on not attacking Gotrek with the Giant, then you can probably not bother with that one, because I'm fully aware that that's not the optimal thing to do. However, it is the fun thing to do. And just because of that, I may even be tempted to do it again in the future. As foolish as that may be. Otherwise, just avoiding Gotrek is probably the best bet. Just running away from him for the whole game. Not moving within 9 inches of him so he can't then redeploy nearer to you. And yeah, just ignore him. I think that's the best choice. Like when people do with Bastion when he drops down from the heavens and fails his charge. Just run away from him. He's not going to be able to catch up with you. And just don't go near him. Good plan. Okay, it's about time to wrap this one up. And before I do, I can just tell you where I finished in the standings at this tournament. So, there were 16 players and I ended up finishing 11th with that. Which is obviously not that great, but the Sylvaneth player that I was up against in round 1 actually won all of his games. I'm not surprised, because that's a nice, powerful army. The Slaves to Darkness player that I lost against there in the final round finished 5th in the end. And the other Stormcast Eternals player, who I defeated, finished above me slightly, just above me, in 9th place. There's not much points difference between me in 11th and that particular player in 9th. It's very, very close. And there you go. I'm pretty sure that's how the standings were worked out anyway. I'm not sure if it was done entirely on battle points or whether it was on the win-loss record as well. I think the way this app displays it is different from how it was scored, potentially. So, what's coming up? Well, there's that Warhammer World one-dayer. There is a Dead Zone tournament coming up in about a month as well. There is the Kings of War Masters in January, which is only a few days after that Warhammer World Age of Sigmar event. So that's going to be a busy week. I think I've taken that week off work anyway, which is handy. So Kings of War Masters, that's going to be fun. There is also another Kings of War event, also at Mantic, which isn't that far away either, within the next couple of months. In fact, I'll just look at my tournament diary I've got right here. Let me see. So, yes, the midweek Warhammer tournament at Warhammer World is on the 18th of January. Then there's Kings of War Masters that weekend. There's a Dead Zone tournament in the first weekend of February. And then the following weekend, there is Kings of War tournament at Mantic. And then a month and a bit later, there's another Kings of War event. So I'll be looking for something to do in there. Other things I've already signed up for. There's Battle Masters, Kings of War, at the end of July. And Clash of Kings 23, which is in early mid-September. So there's obviously going to be more tournaments that I sign up for in the meantime. I'm looking at the tournament schedule all the time. There'll be at least a few Age of Sigmar weekend events in there. I don't think the latest or the next batch of events have gone up yet for the TSN Arena, so I'll be down for some of those definitely, since it's very close to me. And other than that, anything else I want to update you on before I depart? Let's see. I don't think so. And in Rem Show, of course, will be back probably this week. And if not, then it will be very, very soon. We're hoping to get it every week now on Tuesdays, mainly. So you can look forward to plenty of that. We're also probably going to get a game in soon, because I've got a bit of time off work now. And the Remster is now a full-time worldwide rock star at the moment. He's not doing a regular 9-to-5 job as of now. So we should be able to get some games in. Hopefully, maybe even this week. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Over the next week or so. So, some battle report there. We also need to complete the Forest of Rem, which, if you're not aware, on the Andean Rem Show, we have it's kind of like a bit like a choose-your-own-adventure type thing. A little role play where Remington is on an adventure and I'm conjuring up all these obstacles and enemies that he has to get through using his wits and cunning and occasionally a dice roll. And the way that the Season 3 of Forest of Rem was heading, it was leading into a large battle. And we may well do that as an actual battle report rather than in the conventional format, because that would be fun. Ratty says, don't you mean next year? Yes, there won't be any more videos on this channel until next year. What do you think about that? How is it nearly 2023 already? when I think of years like 2007, they don't seem that long ago to me. So it's pretty wild that time is roaring along like this, isn't it? The world is a very different place. My life is a vastly different place. It seems to become a vastly different place pretty much every year or so. I should probably stop going through so many drastic life changes and try and get some stability for a while. Russell says, I'm becoming something of a tournament monster. That is true. Being in Nottingham, it's very easy to become a tournament monster. So I'm within striking distance of lots of not only companies but also venues. And why not be a tournament monster if you've got the time and the resources? Ratty says it's still late 90s. No, I'm not that bothered about the 90s, to be honest. They can go away. The late 2000s, that's where it still feels like we're there somehow. In some way, it doesn't feel like everything's moved on. Ratty says Nottingham lead capital of the world. Yep, it certainly is. And Colonel Billington. Oh, that's old school. Seems only yesterday I was watching a vlog work Orange. Yeah, there hasn't been an episode of that for quite some time. I've dabbled with various different series on this channel over the years, with mixed results. By results I mean whether I actually continue with it. Yeah, there used to be 2d6... It was 2d6 Friday I did for a while. Yeah, that was like the non-Age of Sigmar answer to the Andy and Rem show, really, wasn't it? So that was a fun time as well. Speaking of the Andy and Rem show, we're going to start getting guests on again very soon. And now that we're both playing in tournaments, because Rem was at this tournament, don't forget, then we've got more of our fingers on the pulse, we've got all of our ears to the ground, and we're going to be able to bring you more red hot, spicy, tingling info. Okay, that's enough rambling, and it's time to wrap this one up. Don't forget, by the way, if you want to fund more of my tournament expeditions, then feel free to pledge to the Patreon, which you can find in the description. And at the level it's at right now, it pretty much pays for a tournament ticket a month. So, if you want me to attend more than one tournament per month, then why not pledge all your life savings on Patreon? Don't forget all the other links down there as well. There's Facebook group, Discord server, all that good stuff. And other than that, don't forget to like the video if you haven't liked it already for some reason. And if you haven't already subscribed, then you're a dangerous lunatic who should probably check yourself in somewhere to have some kind of therapy, I would suggest, because it's not healthy behaviour to not be subscribed to this channel. I think that's a fair statement. And all that remains to be said now is... good night out there. Whatever you are.